Hey there, wrestling fans. My name is Marcus Stewart, and welcome to Call It in the Ring. We are talking about Monday Night Raw, the October 15th show of 2018, emanating from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We are on the road to Evolution, as well as Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia, where there will be a World Cup tournament to determine the best in the world. And get used to hearing that phrase, because I think WWE, on average, at least on this show, probably said that exact phrase about 25 or 30 times, and I really don't think I'm exaggerating. They said it a lot, and it's stuck in my brain, and it sucks that it's stuck in my brain. But my God, do we hear that a lot tonight? But there's other things that happened on the show as well, and the first one of those is the bad guy trio of Braun Strowman, Dolph Ziggler, and Drew McIntyre coming out to the ring to brag about their win over the Shield the previous week. They talk about how Dean Ambrose, pretty much how they told him so in terms of his place in the Shield and that he doesn't belong. We get a post-match interview from last week of Dean leaving the arena after the match and telling the interviewer lady that he's not sure where he fits in at the moment. He's kind of all over the place. And the villains are very happy with this. And then they shift over to the World Cup because both Drew and Dolph have World Cup qualifiers to determine the best in the world. And they tease the idea of them facing each other in the tournament with basically saying that they're better than the other one, and Drew getting a good pop when he says that as fantastic as Dolph is, he's no Drew McIntyre, which is absolutely true, in my opinion. But it doesn't really lead to anything other than that. Eventually, the Shield sans Dean come out to the ring, and Seth and Roman assure us that everything is cool with Ambrose and that he's only late right now because he's on Ambrose time, which means that he shows up when he wants to show up. But Seth is ready to battle Drew right now because later in the night, Ambrose is going to be taking on Ziggler in the other World Cup qualifying match to determine the best in the world. And that gives us our first match, Seth versus Drew, which I feel like we've seen a gazillion times, but then again, we've seen a combination of all six of these guys a gazillion times in the last month and a half. I mean, I guess really dating back to since several months since Seth and Dolph started their Intercontinental Championship feud. We've been seeing this, just various configurations of these guys. This is another good match between these two. Not long into the match, Dolph Ziggler tried to show up and interfere. And then Seth gets beaten down because of the distraction. There was a cool point where Seth goes for his Falcon Arrow or his Superplex Falcon Arrow combo, but before he can hit the Falcon Arrow, McIntyre reverses it into his own Falcon Arrow, which that's a new one for him. Eventually, Dean shows up and to even the odds, taking out Dolph outside. The whole match just spills to the floor with Seth hitting the curb stomp on Drew on the floor. And that's enough for him to get the count-out victory. Once again, this is a good match, and it'll be cool to see. You know, it was a good match, but for the World Cup match, which again determines the best in the world, in case you were not aware. I don't think I'm alone in saying that this whole World Cup idea is really silly. One, because it doesn't seem to mean much of anything outside, I guess, they get a trophy. I wish there was a bit more stakes to it, like maybe a title match down the line or something. But also, it's okay. So it's a World Cup match, and the idea is to determine the best in the world. I know I mean, for one, this idea would be cool if they actually did bring in some international stars to compete in this, kind of like the Cruiserweight Classic, how that worked, or the Mae Young Classic. Like, if they took that approach of like, no, we're actually bringing in some outside names, but being that this is the main roster, that kind of was no way that was going to happen, probably, which is unfortunate. But even if you're limited to only working with the main roster of stars, at the very least, wouldn't you want to have as many kind of international wrestlers in the match to at least kind of push the idea of it's a World Cup to determine the best in the world? So why not give McIntyre the win, given that he represents Scotland, to at least have different, like I said, different backgrounds, different nationalities in this match? Because right now, for the World Cup to determine the best in the world, we have Angle, Cena, Hardy, Orton, and Rollins. At least at this particular point, all of them American. So yeah, and if they can't prove that they're the best in the world by wrestling actual other outside talent, at least get some different cultures within your. I mean, WWE's roster has no shortage of international flair and flavor. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, man, like maybe Drew probably should have just won this just for that. But this whole thing is a stupid thing, and Crown Jewel honestly looks like a really dumb show for a few reasons. I'm really not looking forward to it, to be honest with you. But yeah, and let's see. So after we see Seth enter this tournament to determine the best in the world, we see the Bellas sneak into their locker room because they are pretty much terrified that Ronda Rousey is lurking and looking to snap some arms. We see Trish and Lita hanging out, and Bayley comes up and hugs them. And then we see the Shield walking around as Seth is feeling pretty high that he's going to get the chance to determine who's the best in the world. And they're just talking. And then he talks about, just chatting amongst themselves. And he's like telling Roman, it's like, oh, I knew Dean would show up, even though he operates on lunatic time. And he says this like jokingly, like, oh, lunatic time, huh? And Dean takes offense to this. He kind of stops the walk. He hits the brakes, and he's like, what do you mean by that? And Seth and Roman are looking confused, like, what do you mean? What do we mean? And he's like, you guys think I'm funny? He kind of almost, pulls like a Joe Pesci in Goodfellas a little bit, with this kind of like short fuse at the slightest thing of like, oh, do I amuse you? You think I'm funny? Huh? You think I'm a joke? Because and then, Seth is trying to explain, like, I just said lunatic time. Like, it's not, I don't mean anything by it. You know that. And Dean's just like, no. And he's just like, no, I'm not a joke. And then just kind of walks off. And thankfully, not like Joe Pesci, he didn't just like try to shoot Seth Rollins. But, Seth and Roman are looking like, the hell is that all about? So a bit more, I guess a little bit more dissension. And I'm surprised that this has become more of a thing, because when this initially started, I thought it would be kind of a one-off, like one-night storyline, but this is still going. But I can't see, I'm not intrigued to see where Dean ends up at the end of this. Let's see. We get a recap of DX reuniting, which I'm still not excited about seeing Shawn Michaels come back for this. Like I said last week, again, Shawn's my favorite wrestler of all time. I've always loved that he stayed retired, especially after going out the way he did, because there's really no bigger way for anyone to retire. And that if he were ever to come back for anything, it would have to be, like, personally for me, like a dream match against an opponent, like a current modern day opponent that he's never faced. Because why wouldn't he want it? That's the idea of a dream match. Like, have him come back and face AJ Styles or Seth Rollins or Finn Balor or anyone that he has just never faced before. As opposed to coming out of retirement for a tag team match in DX against two guys that he's wrestled countless times in the Brothers of Destruction. And also he's bald, which I know it's the most petty of my complaints, but damn it, just visually, bald Shawn Michaels, like, that's his last match. He's going to be bald. I don't like it. But we get a vignette of the Brothers of Destruction in what looks like a boiler room, which is kind of a nice callback to both of their 90s era versions of their characters, some boiler room brawls and stuff like that. And they talk about how they lost respect for DX after they were dishonest, which, to be fair, is absolutely true because DX cheated their asses off at Super Showdown to win that match. To the point where, like, you could even say that Triple H was the one that changed the stipulation at the last minute to make it no DQ, and then Shawn was constantly interfering, and they had the taintiest of tainted victories. The taintiest of the taint, if you will. So, yeah, kind of, like, I mean, DX, even though they're kind of the faces, they may as well be the heels, because they were the heels in Australia, for sure, and I don't know if the Brothers of Destruction were supposed to be the heels after turning on them, even though they were completely justified again because DX swindled them, basically. But basically, Taker and Kane say they're going to kill DX. So yeah, I still not really looking forward to the match. So, next up, we've got Ember Moon and Nia Jax taking on Dana Brooke, and they're returning Tamina, who I'd completely forgotten about, because even when Tamina was present, I would completely forget about her. Apparently she's been out for the last 9 months or so with a shoulder injury, which I was not aware of, and that I think they said the Royal Rumble, the Women's Royal Rumble, was the last time that she wrestled. I was like, really? Like, she wasn't even I could have sworn she was in the WrestleMania Battle Royal, but maybe she wasn't. But as this match is going on, they announced that there's going to be a #1 contendership Battle Royal at Evolution. Of course, the winner will get a women's title match, I'm assuming for the respective brand that they're on. And we see some of the names like Asuka, and I think the Iconics are in it. But we also hear that Tori Wilson will be returning to be in the match, which, sure, you got to do something like that for a Battle Royal, have some nostalgia in there. So, cool. We get like a big showdown between Tamina and Nia, which doesn't feel nearly as big of a showdown, mainly because Nia is infinitely more successful than Tamina. But Tamina does deliver a pretty impressive Samoan drop to Nia. That's a nice feat of strength. But it doesn't really matter because Ember Moon gets the tag and hits the Eclipse on Dana Brooke to get the win. After the match, we get a really weird and kind of stupid thing where Tamina, who is upset that they lost, she confronts Nia after the match. She shoves Ember down, and then she super kicks Nia. And as Nia's recovering, Ember gets back up, and instead of, maybe beating the crap out of the lady that she not only just wrestled, but also shoved her for no reason and was being a sore loser, instead of like going after her, she kind of waits for a bit, and then teams up with Tamina to throw Nia out of the ring. And the idea is to kind of like foreshadow the Battle Royal, which, WWE has done before, like stuff like that of like, oh, we got a Battle Royal. That means we got to have people throw each other over the top ropes to show their dominance and build momentum. Kind of the same thing for like Money in the Bank or any kind of ladder match. Like, well, we got to have people bring out ladders randomly and climb it and grab the thing above the ring to kind of show that they can do it. But this was stupid. One, because Nia and Ember are supposed to be really good friends. So like, this kind of makes Ember look like both a jerk and an idiot, because they eliminate Nia, and then she immediately tries to eliminate Tamina, which if she did that, at least it would have saved some face, but she fails at this, and then they struggle for a while, and then eventually Dana, of all people, comes in and throws both of them out, and she's the last one standing, as in the lady that just took the pin and lost the match. She's the one that is left standing tall and gets her music played. And this whole thing was just really dumb. And like I said, Ember came out looking the worst of this. It's like, so you turned on your friend, basically. So, I mean, I don't think it's a heel turn, but it made no sense either way. And then you couldn't even turn on her right, because as soon as you tried to go after Tamina, she turned it around on you, and then you're like, oh, I'm in trouble. So, yeah, not great. Next up, we see some TMZ article about the Bellas and Ronda Rousey. Apparently, they've been trading barbs with each other on social media the past week. They've been calling each other the Bellas called Ronda a do nothing bitch, which apparently is some kind of hashtag that is like a popular hashtag, like a do nothing bitch, which I'm not cool, so I have not heard of this hashtag until now. And then Ronda responding by calling them do nothing Bellas, and they've just been saying stuff like this all week. Obviously, this is a work. They're working the media, brothers. They got they got the marks, which is cool. I like when, especially nowadays, like to kind of see TMZ. I don't know if they're falling for this, but the idea that they're reporting this as if it's true, because it clearly isn't. Like the Bellas and Ronda are clearly just using, like, you know, like what a lot of wrestlers do now, using social media to build their feud. So like for TMZ to kind of report on this as if it's like a legit beef between the ladies of like, look what they're saying to each other, and it's like, have you been watching the show lately? They're actively feuding right now. Is amusing to me. So Ronda makes her way to the ring, and she wants an explanation for what happened last week, because she's like, what the hell? The Bellas come out, and Nikki say, we don't owe you anything. And Nikki goes on a rant for a while, saying that she deserves to be champion, and kind of says the things you would expect them to say about Ronda Rousey, saying that she's entitled and that she has been given everything and she doesn't deserve the belt or to have these opportunities. Ronda fires right back, saying that since day one, she has tried to be respectful of the business and of the other women that were here before her, but if she gets real for a moment, saying that the Bellas encompass everything about the original Divas era that always made Ronda sick to her stomach, but she tried to be respectful to the Bellas because they'd been there longer. And she goes on and on, just ripping into the Bellas to a big pop. Like Philly was completely behind Ronda here. And she got in some great lines saying that they plagiarize and dilute the movesets of their men, of course referring to Daniel Bryan and I guess John Cena, even though him and Nikki aren't together anymore. She gets in a weird like smallpox insult, saying that they're a disease like smallpox and they have to be eradicated. And these three go back and forth with each other for a bit, but Ronda again is kind of winning this, which is fair because the Bellas are clearly just playing their roles perfectly as the heels that think that pretty much what the Bellas have always been, like the heels that think that they're better because they're like multimedia icons, I guess. They're big celebrities outside of wrestling, and they're acting like entitled biatches to sum it up. And they're making Ronda look super good here because they're not really. It's not a back and forth where they're trying to match Ronda or trying to outdo her. They're saying like typical heel stuff to where Ronda always gets the last word, which I appreciate. And it's something that Stephanie McMahon could learn, because if this was the other way, Stephanie would probably fire off like legit insults to try to like bury or to kind of hinder the babyface that's supposed to be, that she should really be trying to make look better than her. So the Bellas, their comebacks are nowhere near as vitriolic as Ronda's, which felt completely by design. And then especially with Ronda kind of getting the line of the exchange, saying that because the Bellas eventually, they are saying like, oh, we were here and we were knocking down doors of this division. Of course, saying it in a way where we know that's BS because they're the Bellas. Not saying it didn't contribute, but obviously not to the extent that they claim, because they're being delusional heels, which is exactly what they should be. And then Ronda counters that, saying that the only door that Nikki has knocked down was the door to John Cena's bedroom, which gets a huge pop from the crowd. And then, excuse me, she follows that up by saying, and then John eventually threw you out of that same door. And then that's about it for the Bellas in terms of any sort of verbal comeback, because that's, I mean, you can't really top that. And then Ronda's saying that they know that she can rip their arms off and beat them to death, and how about we try that right now? And the Bellas tease heading to the ring for a fight, but they stop short, of course, and they bring out a team of security to get in between them, and they follow the security to the ring as a shield. Of course, Ronda, like she has every security team that's been put in front of her, she dispatches of these guys on the floor, including one guy who's like yelling and screaming as Ronda's beating him up, like he's like trying to stop her, like, Ronda, no, you can't do this. And then Ronda picks him up for the Samoan drop. He's like screaming on her shoulders, and then she just drops the hell out of him on the floor, and he's just selling his ass off. Like he is making the most of his limited role in this segment. So I can't can't be mad at him for that. But of course, by the time the security has been slain, the Bellas are nowhere in sight. And it wraps up a really fun and entertaining segment. And I say this, I want to see that match more just because like they did their job perfectly of making me want to see Ronda just twist Nikki's arm out of its socket. So mission accomplished there. Next up, we see Chad Gable and Bobby Roode hanging out with Kurt Angle, who's decked out in vacation gear. He's got like a floral shirt and a little straw hat. He's just looking all relaxed, talking about how great he feels. And the Gable and Roode are just saying like, man, it's a cool shirt, all that good stuff. Eventually they leave, and then No Way Jose, where the hell has he been? I forgot about No Way Jose. He comes by, and Kurt dances with him for a little bit. And then Baron Corbin shows up. And it's just like, oh, that was pretty funny what you did last week. Well, how about this? You're going to have a handicap match tonight against the AOP. Deal with that. And Kurt's looking very concerned because he did not bring his gear or was prepped to wrestle at all. So he's going to have to figure something out. This brings us to our next World Cup qualifying match to determine the best in the world between Dean Ambrose and Dolph Ziggler. This match isn't nearly as long as the Seth and Drew one. At one point, Dolph hit a top rope X Factor to Drew, which looked nice. But Drew interferes in this match relatively quickly, but then Seth Rollins is like right behind him and stops him. And then kind of the focal point of this match is that Drew and Seth are fighting outside. Dean takes out Drew, but then he gets taken down by, I think, Dolph. And then Seth tries to help him off on the floor, and then Ambrose just shoves Seth to the ground. And you don't know if he mistook Seth for Drew, or if he's just being, he's just annoyed at having to get help. He's like, hey, I don't need your help. Unfortunately, as soon as Dean gets back in the ring, he gets super kicked right in his face to give Dolph the win. So now he moves on to the World Cup tournament to determine the best in the world. And Dean and Seth have some major issues after the match where Rollins is trying to explain, or not even explain, he's trying to figure out what Dean's deal is, because Seth has nothing to explain here. He didn't do anything wrong. So he's waiting for Ambrose to recover. He's asking him, what is going on with you, dude? Dean doesn't want to hear it, and they get into a little bit of a shoving match, and then Dean just kind of leaves. But Rollins isn't having that. He chases Dean up the ramp, it spins him around. They really get into a heated exchange where they're just shoving each other on the stage until Roman comes out and breaks it up. And then Corbin comes out, and he's just having a good old laugh at this scene. And he's like, hey guys, I don't want to see the Shield dissolve on my watch. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to have a 6-man tag team rematch from last week tonight. Dean immediately bails, and Roman just kind of glares a hole into Corbin this whole time. So we got, for the second week in a row, we're getting this, or for the third week in a row, or maybe the third time within like less than 2 weeks, we're getting this 6-man tag, because this entire show revolves around these 6 men, because all the titles are there and there's really nothing else going on that's big, which is a problem. It's been a problem. Finn Balor. Speaking of things that are happening again, Finn Balor is taking on Jinder Mahal. Before this, though, as Finn comes to the ring, we see Dolph backstage hyping up Drew and Braun, saying like, hey, the Shield's on the ropes right now. We can end them for good. And Drew tells Braun that he wants to see him kill Dean and Seth in front of Roman, because that would be great. Braun takes exception, though, to being bossed around, and he's like, I do what I want. And he threatens to murder Dean, or not Dean, but he threatens to murder Drew and Dolph if they blow it tonight, saying that they better pull their weight, and if there's any BS from them, they're gonna get these hands. But anyways, back to this meaningless rematch. We got Jinder Mahal and Finn. The only highlight is the return of Samir Singh, the other Singh brother that's been gone for months and months. He's back. And that's about all there is of note to this match. Finn, thankfully, destroys Mahal very quickly, hits the coup de grace in just like a couple minutes. I was afraid they were going to do some 50-50 crap and have Mahal get the win here, but Finn takes care of him pretty without breaking a sweat. After the match, Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush interrupt, and Leo's doing his shtick, hyping up Bobby Lashley and being really annoying. And we hear that Kevin Owens is getting knee surgery because apparently he was legit injured and that he needed to be taken off. So that explains why Bobby destroyed Kevin last week, to kind of have a reason to write him off TV, which is always good. Sometimes WWE doesn't do that enough, where if someone's hurt and needs to be written off, instead of just taking them off TV, let someone destroy them and kind of get like get a rub out of it, I guess, kind of like attribute it to someone of like, hey, instead of KO got hurt somewhere, we got to take him off. Like, actually, let's just have Bobby, since he's turning heel everywhere anyway. Let's use something to kind of launch that. Let's have him destroy Kevin. And then we have not only does Bobby get made because of this, but we have a legit reason to take Kevin off. And then you plant a future seed if Kevin comes back and you decide, like, if you need someone to put him with, have him go after Bobby, because you laid that story out already. So it's something I would like to see more often with WWE. But Lashley poses in front of Finn, with Leo talking about how Finn wishes he had a great body like that, which, to be fair, Finn has arguably the best body in WWE. That guy's like a miniature statue of David, like the sculpture of David. Nothing happens here, though. It's just kind of Lashley and Leo being obnoxious and Finn just kind of glaring at them. And he takes a little while to leave, and it seems like they're, at least I hope so, that they would kind of start a feud between these two, because why not? Neither of them are doing anything at the moment in terms of having an opponent. And that would be a good first feud for Bobby, because Finn is really popular. And for the love of God, anything that gives Finn Balor an actual program is A-okay. So I hope that this leads to something and it's not just a nothing interaction. But this segues right into our match, which is Bobby Lashley taking on Tyler Breeze. And of course, Leo's at ringside, and he's just going on and on about how, trying to start the Lashley chants again, like, Lashley, Lashley, Lashley. And talking about how great Bobby's body is. And Bobby takes a while to start the match. He's just too busy posing all over the place as Tyler is just standing there like, what the hell, dude? Let's go. Eventually, Bobby does go and squashes Tyler with little effort, as Leo just will not shut up. The Corey Grace talks about how Leo is the most annoying personality he may have ever seen, which solidifies Lio Rush as the new Enzo Amore, which, hey, I mean, Enzo's mouth took him to some great places. So, but yeah, I've thought that too last week. I was like, so is Leo like the new Enzo in terms of like just being the obnoxious loudmouth? Sure. Hey, if he's got a mouth, use it. Trish Stratus and Lita come out to hype up their match for Evolution, their tag team match against Alexa Bliss and Mickie James. Before they can say too much, Bliss and Mickie interrupt, and they start imitating Trish and Lita, being very demeaning and making fun of just everything about them. And they bring up that they're gonna win because, unlike Trish and Lita, who have not had a match in forever, Mickie and Alexa wrestle every week, so they're just better prepared for this. And this leads Trish and Lita to make some Allen Iverson jokes, imitating his famous practice interview from a few years ago, which, if you're not aware, is, like mid-2000s. That was so long ago. But Allen Iverson used to play for the Philadelphia 76ers, which explains why they did this, of course, in Philly. And I think he was being interviewed, and he was asked about, like, something about practice. And then Allen just goes into this weird, bizarre rant about why are we talking about practice? And, we're not even talking about a game. Not a game. You guys are talking about practice. I mean, I'm the franchise player, and we talking about practice. Like, Trish and Lita literally do that entire thing. And they say practice almost as many times as WB has said that the World Cup will determine the best in the world. Eventually, a fight is teased with Alexa and Mickie, much like the Bellas not that long before, making her way to the ring, and then, of course, immediately backpedaling because they're going to do this on their time. And that wraps up that. That match should be fine. It'll be cool to see Trish and Lita again. But at the same time, this is kind of the second segment in a row that has gone the exact same way with the ladies in terms of the heels on the stage teasing to go fight the babyface who's in the ring challenging them and then not doing it. The Riot Squad are backstage and they make fun of Bayley. I would ask why they're doing that, but also they are the Riot Squad, so they're agents of chaos. So they do whatever they want, man. And Bayley, being Bayley, just kind of takes it. Then again, there is 3 of them, so I guess if she tried to jump one of them, she would immediately get beaten down. So maybe it's better that she just kind of takes this bullying from the Riots. This leads us to the Authors of Pain, the AOP, taking on Kurt Angle. However, in the ring, we don't see Kurt. We see a conquistador, another conquistador in that gold suit, this time with the gold boots, in the ring. And as soon as I saw the gold boots, you kind of immediately know where this is going. The AOP murder the conquistador in no time flat, getting a pin in about a minute. But obviously, this is not Kurt Angle. One, he doesn't really have the same body shape anyway, but also he tries to go for an ankle lock during a match and just completely blows it, which Kurt would never do, ever. He never blows anything. Corey, thankfully, is not an idiot, and he immediately knows that something is up with this guy and that he is not Kurt Angle. Baron Corbin is on the stage watching this, just sitting in his chair, just delighting in who he thinks is Kurt Angle getting mauled to death. This brings out the real Kurt Angle, who comes from behind and hits a big old angle slam on Corbin on the stage, which probably hurts like hell. And Kurt is still in his vacation clothes as he does this, so it's the most leisurely ass-kicking in the history of ass-kickings. But I'm curious, so I think we can kind of pencil in that Kurt will probably, he's going to lose that World Cup anyway to determine the best in the world, but I can pretty much see that Corbin will be the reason he loses this chance to be considered the best in the world. So yeah, that happened. The Riot Squad are backstage again, and they smear condiments on Natalia's dressing room door. The condiments appear to be ketchup and mustard. They're just smearing it all over her name, and it's like, okay, again, this fits their gimmick in terms of like they do random dicky things, but their random dicky things are either really minor, like more like mild annoyances than just anything truly like anything that would cause any real unrule. They're just kind of like literal kind of things that if it happened to you, you just kind of throw your arms out like, oh man, come on. But that's about it. It's just kind of like a regular prank, and just how random they are. Like, so they're just gonna smear ketchup and mustard on this door, and they're really proud of it. Like, they're so proud of what they did. They're just kind of like patting each other on the back, laughing. Like, this is just the most brilliant thing they've ever thought of. So I don't know, something about that. I was just like, okay, yeah, sure, I guess. Chaos, yeah. This brings us to Natalya taking on Ruby Riott. Natalya, for the 3rd time for the ladies tonight, she cuts a promo on the stage before the match saying that she is not an idiot and that she brought some backup, that backup being Bayley and Sasha Banks, who we haven't seen in a little bit, it feels like. The match is nothing special, it doesn't go that long. Sarah Logan breaks up a sharpshooter that Natalya has on Ruby to get the DQ. And then eventually the Riots beat up all 3 of the good guys, and they're left standing tall. Elias is backstage with one of his helpers, and he wants a green guitar pick, but he does not get it. So he gets, or he did have it all along. It was a test. He was testing his helper guy, and the guy of course fails this and gets a bunch of picks thrown in his face. Then Elias goes out to the ring for his weekly concert, and he talks about going to lunch with somebody named Carson, who I can only assume, based on what, just on the context clues, that he's some sort of Philadelphia-based athlete who is injured at the moment. But he just says, oh yeah, I had lunch with this guy, and he talks about how crappy it is to pretend that he has to like Philly. And then he moves on to making fun of Gritty, the mascot, who, if you are not familiar with Gritty, the new mascot for the Philadelphia Flyers hockey team. I encourage you to go look up Gritty, because he is his own brand of entertainment, we'll say. But yeah, making fun of Gritty is pretty low-hanging fruit at this point. It's not hard. But you gotta do it. You gotta do it if you're in Philly. He's interrupted by Apollo Crews of all people, who we haven't seen since Dana split herself from them. And he comes out saying, like, well, everyone else interrupts Elias, so I figured it was my turn. And then he gets serious and goes into a rant saying that he's been too quiet for too long, and he's watched so many people, including Elias, pass him over and just advance farther than he has. So he's sick of it, and tonight he's going to rectify that, basically. Elias tries to attack Apollo, but it fails, and he gets body pressed out of the ring, and Apollo he just stands tall. So, hey, I'm glad they're using Apollo Crews. He's a guy that has an immense amount of talent, even though he has the personality of petrified wood. But if you can limit his mic work, or at least you got to kind of find a persona that fits him, because literally his only character trait for the entirety that he was in the company, including NXT, was a happy guy he's just really happy to be here. Like, he just smiles a lot, and he's just so happy to be on the roster. And that about summed up Apollo Crews, which is not enough to get you anywhere of note in wrestling. So hopefully this is the start of maybe a more serious Apollo Crews that's like, you know what? No, I want my opportunity. I'm going to take him. What if maybe he teams up with Lashley, since it's kind of a similar dynamic? And then, kind of fits like two big muscly guys that are just kind of, they're both ball too. They're here to take over. So that's a possibility. Roman and Dean Ambrose are talking backstage. We can't hear what they're saying, but they seem to be on the same page. This brings us to our main event of the Shield, taking on BD&D, Braun, Dolph, and Drew. That's my name for them. It's copyrighted. I expect a quarter every time somebody says it. And the immortal words of J. Jonah Jameson. Braun forces Dolph to start this match. He just yells at him saying, like, you want to pull your weight, you start the match. Because Braun is the scariest Little League coach of all time. The Shield have some really major problems going into this match, as does the villain team. Both teams are having some personal issues about this, including Dolph constantly knocking Seth into Dean accidentally, which Dean is not a fan of. But then on the other side, you got Drew and Braun specifically just trying to outdo each other when they're killing Roman Reigns, and they keep tagging each other in and out, much to the other person's annoyance. And Braun yelling at Drew to pull his weight, and Drew saying, like, here you go. Is that enough weight being pulled for you? And them just getting into a big stare down, because that is a money showdown if there ever was one. The miscommunication continues with Dolph shoving, like, Dean hitting Dirty Deeds, but then Dolph's again shoving Seth into Dean to break up the pin. And then Dean and Seth get into a big argument with Dean attempting to hit Dirty Deeds on Seth, which I thought he was gonna actually hit. But then as Dolph hits the zigzag to Dean using this distraction for a close two, there's just a lot happening here, and a lot of it's just the two teams on the brink of imploding. Drew accidentally hits the Claymore on Braun, and then he gets speared down for his troubles. And then in a kind of cool ending, Dolph tries to go for, I think, a famouser or something, but Roman counters it, and then causing Dolph to run right into a triple powerbomb. It was like the Shield assembled super fast for the triple powerbomb, like if Dean hit like a button on his wrist thing that summoned the rest of the Shield. That's how quickly they got there. And they hit like a very fast triple powerbomb on Dolph. And Dean gets the pin. So now he's 2-1, I guess, for getting the pin on these guys. And the Shield leave, and they seem to be all on the same page. Like, even though literally Dean was trying to hit his finishing move on Seth, after the match, Seth is he's all like, "Oh, brother," he's rubbing his head. They're just all on a good page, which is weird. Maybe not consistent. I know they won, but shouldn't Dean be a little bit more like, I don't know, indifferent, or at least have some ill feelings maybe afterwards, given how they've presented him all night? Someone that does have ill feelings, though, is Braun Strowman, who was not happy with his team blowing it. And he gets back into the ring, and Drew is kind of down by the apron, and Dolph is in the middle recovering. And Braun grabs Dolph by the hair, yells at him that he warned him that if he screwed this up, he was going to get these hands. Dolph does get these hands. He gets them wrapped around his body as Braun delivers a big old running power slam to Dolph. But then, as soon as Braun turns around, he gets nailed with a Claymore from Drew, and it looked fantastic. Like, this is a great looking Claymore, and Braun's second Claymore of the night, though this time this was intentional, as Michael Cole really made it a point to emphasize, like, that was intentional, that the Claymore kick is going to be in the World Cup to determine the best in the world, maybe. And then Drew goes to leave, and Braun immediately gets up, like, he more or less no-sells the Claymore, which I think is on purpose, because then Drew gets to the top of the ramp, he turns around, he sees Braun standing there saying, like, is that all you got, son? And Drew seeming nonplussed by this, like, he doesn't seem like he's like, oh crap, he's already back up, like, he's just kind of glaring at him and kind of accepting that pretty much from this point, it seems like it is on between Drew and Dolph. Like, he is ready for this. He knew where this was going, and he has accepted his fate. So, which should be a great match. Drew versus Braun. A lot of people have been wanting to see that, myself included. And it's always fun to see Dolph Ziggler get beat up. And I'm assuming that, I mean, they're done as a threesome. Like, Drew and Dolph are breaking up from Braun. I mean, they have to be at this point now that they've gotten physical with each other. Now the question would be how much longer before Drew and Dolph split up. Hopefully sooner than later, I hope. But that wraps up the show. Decent show. I'm getting a little bit worried about Evolution in terms of its build. It feels like, I don't know, even though it's the pay-per-view that's sooner, it feels like it's not as big a deal as it should be. I mean, I guess the only thing it really has going for it is that it's the first all-women's pay-per-view, but other than that, I'm not really feeling much of the hype. Maybe it's because WWE has to, again, they're building towards Crown Jewel at the same time, so like they can't put all of their time and attention on Evolution to make it feel like it's this big show. It's kind of like it's just a show that they're building towards on top of the other show in Saudi Arabia, which is a bigger show just because of the venue and of course how much money they got from that. But it's been a problem in terms of like making me want to get more excited for Evolution. Like, I'm gonna watch it, but there hasn't been enough of like, oh, I gotta see that. Like, that's gonna be cool. So yeah, I'm getting a little bit worried about that show, and they don't really have much time. I think it's next weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So they really don't have time. They got 3 shows to build to really get to get that show really hot. So that's a problem. And again, like I've said before, the main event is too top heavy right now, with all the titles being monopolized by this one giant story between the Shield and the Not Shield. And hopefully, now that the Shield have beaten the bad guys 2-1, and they have to be done at this point, we can start seeing some more title programs, and like Seth and Roman can start, or at least I guess Roman can't defend it until Crown Jewel, but Seth maybe can get some open challenges or just anything to do with defending the IC title, as well as Drew and Dolph defending the tag titles would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, that's about my thoughts on the show. It's still a bit too scatterbrained, and I can't wait till we get both of these shows done so we can just go back to building towards a normal pay-per-view. But thanks for listening, guys. I will be back tomorrow with my SmackDown Live review. If you want to talk to me on Facebook, or not Facebook, but Twitter, if you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at MarcusStewart7. That's the number 7. You can also find this show on YouTube, iTunes, and Podbean at Marcus Stewart's Marcus Writes About Games, is the name of the channel. But you can also find other content, as well as the website that I have of the same name, right? Marcus Writes About Games, where I blog and post articles about video games. You can also find me on GamingHistoria.com, which is another website where I contribute doing news stories and reviews for video games. And you can find me on other podcasts, including Carving Gaming Rushmores, which I have a new episode coming this week, I'm involved with 2 Dungeons and Dragons podcasts. One is called We Wanted Adventurers. You can find it on Extra Life or SoundCloud, or just Google it. It's a great show. I play a bard. He's a really goofy bard with with a great dungeon master and some great friends. And the other campaign is called Dragon Guard, where I play a cat man who is a ranger and kind of talks suspiciously similar to Hulk Hogan. Both of those campaigns are quite a riot, a Ruby riot. We smear condiments on everything for no reason. And yeah, it'd be greatly appreciated if you check those out. I think you'll really enjoy them. But until next time, guys, thanks for listening. I will see you next time.